Hi, this is lecture 6 of the Gilded Age on immigration. Today we're going to kind of trace the steps that immigrants took through arriving in the United States and eventually finding their foothold in the United States. You can see here's a picture of the immigrants traveling. They packed everything that they had into a small suitcase or a bag that you can see here from this child, and they came to America. And it's hard to imagine packing up your entire life, looking for something new and coming to a new place where you didn't know what was going on, what anyone was like, what you didn't know the language, you didn't know the culture, and you had to find a way to fit in and find a way to kind of start your life anew when you have very little money and you have really nothing that ties you to the area or to the new places that you're going to. So we're talking about the people that built America, and industrialization builds America, and it leads to an increase of immigration. There's many reasons why this happens, uh, but the main reason is that as we have all these factories building up, we need more workers, and we actually go and end up recruiting people to come to America in order to work in these factories. So we have this increased need for people to come, for immigrants to come and work in these factories. The railroads also helped, transport immigrants all across the world, or across the country, sorry. And they use the railroads. We use the railroads to industrialize and transport goods, and it allowed for us to build up cities in areas where we could centralize factories and housing, so that a lot of work could be done in one place, and then we could transport the goods out using these trains. Here's an image of a child, like a child labor group. Um, a lot of the children in immigrant families had to work because immigrants made less money uh, than native born. Children would work, women would work, the father would work, so it was like a kind of a whole family deal in order to make enough money to survive. So another image of children working with the spindles. A lot of time children worked on these machines because they had little hands. They could get into the machines and fix them like an adult couldn't because their hands were too big to get inside and fix them. All right, so from the 1890s onwards, we have what's called a new immigrant. We're used to having like the Irish and the British, the people like the English-speaking people that would come to the country. But as time goes on, we have this demand for new immigrants because there are not enough people coming just from those areas, and the idea of the American dream is moving on beyond England and Ireland, and we need to now get immigrants from other places. So we have people from Eastern Europe, Asia, the West Indies, which is like the Caribbean, and then also Mexico. Uh, we need to talk about why they're arriving. There's many reasons why they arrive. There's push factors and pull factors. Okay, push factors are things that push you out of your country to go to a new place. So if I'm living in China and there's some things that are happening in China that I don't like, those are going to push me out. So these are some examples. There's 5 here. So first, you have scarce land. If there's not enough land for you to have a farm and do your play your role in life, then you need to find a new way to live, and you can come to America and maybe get some land. Famines. There's the famous Irish potato famine when the potato crops were dying out and thousands of people are dying. That can push you out because you need to find food, and if you're not able to feed yourself in the country you're at, it's good to go to a new country. Farm jobs were lost to new machines. So as mechanization pops up all over the world, people had to leave, and America has a plentiful job market, so that people come to America to find new jobs. You have political and religious persecution. If you don't like politics or religion in your country, you could come to America, where we have political and religious freedom. Threat of war. There could be genocides or wars going on in your country. You need to get out. You can come to America. Poverty and health epidemics. If there's a huge strain of the flu going around and you're trying to get out of that, away from that, you could leave. If you don't have any money, you can try to come to another country and find a job there. Okay, there's also pull factors. America, is the American dream, the land where you can do anything. So first, there's a promise of freedom and a better life. If you're impoverished in other countries, you see America and you see the wealth that's happening in America. It's a place that you could come and become wealthy. Andrew Carnegie's from Ireland. He's actually an immigrant, and he made himself obviously extremely wealthy. If you have family and friends that are already settled there, then you could come follow them. A lot of times people would, like the head of the household, the man would leave, come to America, find a job, get money, and then eventually send for your family to come back, come with you and live there so you can live in America. I've talked about the plentiful factory jobs, and there's also American recruiters. A lot of factories or a lot of companies would send people to other countries in order to try to recruit them to come work for them. They wanted them to work for them because it was cheaper. You didn't have to pay immigrants as much, so it was a good um, labor source is to have immigrants come in and work for you. So getting here, a lot of times when you're getting here, you're taking big steamships or sailboats, and they pack you in like cattle. So you can see in this picture, these people are like shoulder to shoulder. A lot of times there's only 2, 3, 4 restrooms on a whole boat for 1,000 people or so, and that's going to get kind of dirty. Difficult conditions. It's going to take you a week to get there across the Atlantic. It's a long, tough journey to make in order to get there. Uh, we were able to get Eastern Europeans who don't live near water sources because of the advent of the rail systems in Europe. They were able to connect to the seaports and then eventually get them to steamships, which would get them in to or get them to America. So from Europe it took a week. Asia took 3. Obviously the Pacific Ocean's a lot bigger than the Atlantic, so it's a longer journey. Okay, so then the deal is when you get here, you still aren't in. You still have to pass a series of tests, so to say, that and requirements that will allow you to come in. So there's 2 places. There's Ellis Island, which is on the west or on the east coast in New York Harbor, and there's Angel Island, which is near San Francisco. So the east coast, you go to Ellis Island. Between 1892 and 1924, there's 17 million Europeans that pass through. Huge number, lots of immigrants, and it's only 32 years, so it's not like it was like a huge 100 or 200 year period. It's only 32 years, and it's almost 500,000 per year, so it's a lot, or more than 500,000. Immigrants had to go through inspection process. It could take 5 hours. They're looking at you to make sure you're healthy, you don't have disease. They want to make sure that you can work and are going to be a productive citizen of the United States. On the West Coast, we had Angel Island, a lot less people. Okay, you're looking at 31 years here. From 1851 to 1882, only 300,000. So not very many people. The trip, it takes longer, but it's a lot more comfortable. The problem is when they are at Angel Island, it's a longer detention time. There's higher questioning and physical testing. Reason is a racial reason. Asian people look different than white people. So when the white people come in from Europe through Ellis Island, everyone looks fairly similar. When you're coming in from Asia, the people look a lot different. They're a little bit apprehensive of the people that are coming. They don't know their cultures or their customs, so they take a longer time to screen and kind of check out these people. Here's a picture of Ellis Island, okay, and Angel Island. Okay, a little bit different, bigger island here for Angel Island. All right, so the immigrant checklist. These are some challenges that they had. You remember that majority of these new immigrants spoke different languages, so all this was really difficult. So they had to get a job, they had to find a place to live, and they had to learn English. The first 2 are very difficult. If you don't speak English, how are you supposed to find a place to live and get a job? The way they did this is they would try to find people that were like them, and that's why you have a lot of areas that are popping up that are like Little Tokyo or Little Italy, places where people are all similar, so they could go there and actually work together, and they had kind of pipelines to jobs and housing, so they could help the immigrants that were similar to them try to find jobs. All right, so where are they going to go when they get to America? The place where they could find the cheapest housing, and that's obviously going to be in the cities. So they worked as unskilled industrial laborers. Most of the time, they had the hardest, lowest paying jobs and most dangerous of all jobs. The employers were willing to put these people in the jobs that were the most difficult, and these people were willing to take these jobs because they were desperate for money. They needed to find a way to make their lives work in America, so they would be willing to do anything. They had a break from their home traditions at home. Immigrant women, as I said, and children were twice as likely to work than native borns because of the lower paying jobs for the males. They needed that supplemental income from the parents and from the mother and the child. All right, and so you can see the cities of the factory system in the city here, all the smokestacks. These are the conditions that these people were living in. All right, and here's an example of someone that's trying to do anything they can do to make it. You can see them sleeping in these terrible conditions. Okay, and then these children sleeping here. These photos were taken by a man named Jacob Reese, who we'll talk about during the Progressive era. Okay, so I've stated most of this before, it's the cheapest, most convenient place to live. The factories and mills were there, and that's where they offered jobs, so you didn't have to have huge transportation to get from one place to another. Tenement buildings offered cheap housing. We'll talk about tenement slums later on. It's the next best thing to home, the familiarity. These are the ethnic ghettos, where they could find people that were like them. Ghetto is actually a term referring to a place where you put a lot of the same ethnicity together. It's kind of a little bit different than what we think of it as today, but a lot of times the places were run down and weren't the nicest of all locations. All right, so that's Immigrants. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure that you get all the underlined stuff written down, and I'll see you in class.